This week in comic books, we get a slight explanation on what the greater fool theory is, and I'll show you how relevant that is to comic book collecting. Also, who is Dorian Gray, and why is it so relevant in this new Vault comic book? Because it's a retcon. Also, what does all or nothing thinking fallacy get you locked away for thousands of years? All that and more right after that intro. What's going on, you wonderful weirdos? We got a short one for you today. It's not really that much picked up, but lots of good stuff in it. But I'll do my best to keep this as short as I can for you. If you don't know, my name's Pocan Joe, and basically I read a bunch of comic books and I regurgitate a summary to you. And if anything tidbitty kind of philosophy-wise was in there, I tried to give that to you. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, I also do about once a month challenge builds. This month, December, I'm building a Keyblade. Thank you, Spectacular Spider Grandpa, for the recommendation. Definitely that video is going to be coming to you soon. But if you have not had the opportunity to check out the promo video, that will be right up here in the little tag area thing. So definitely check that out. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Talking about some DC. We got 2 Endless Winters book. And don't make the mistake that I did. This one actually comes first. And then the actual mainline story. But for a tie-in story, this is very relevant and very important. Because you'll jump into this and you're like, wait a second, why is all this happening? It's because of past events in here. That's right, we go back into the past again with Black Adam fighting this Frost King guy and what kind of happened. And in this, like I said in the intro, we kind of get this all or nothing thinking. And eventually it gets him locked up. All or nothing thinking is a fallacy that everybody has succumbed to at one point or another. It's basically the, oh, I'm taking my ball and going home, right, type attitude. Or if I can't do this little tiny thing, then screw the whole project, right? It's that all or nothing type of mentality. And like I said, everybody grows from it. Black Adam personifies this to you as his personality. And that's where it can definitely come into like problems in people's lives. So definitely something to check out there. I know I've suffered from it myself. Like if I can't have the whole cake, then nobody's getting cake. Ha ha ha. Same thing for Christmas. If I don't get a Christmas gift, nobody's getting a Christmas gift. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that kind of mentality. That's all or nothing fallacies. And here, that's basically what Black Adam is. And in this, we kind of get that, a lot of that. If you know, the superheroes are trying to save everybody, but they're doing a horrible job because they're not doing it right. So now I'm going to do it. And, of course, he fails as well. So that kind of nuancy thing in here. And then it leads right into Justice League Endless Winter #2, where his all-or-nothing thinking got him captured by the Frost King. Talking about Black Adam. Then the Justice League shows up to give him a hand. And even though they are trying to help him to some degree, he's still real snotty with them. Again, this is that all or nothing. If I can't be the hero, then really nobody's the hero type of philosophy that's going through his mind here. And him and Superman end up battling it out. Guess on the winner there. But we also find out that there is a human nature to this whole Frost King thing. And even though he was kind of suffering from all or nothing thinking throughout the storyline that we've been reading, he's really doing it to protect his family or to be with his family, I think is more relevant. Yeah, he's trying to be with his family. However, with them are in a stasis in ice but still alive, he goes into a stasis himself. So one day when the cure actually does happen, he can be reunited with his family. Great moral story there. Great hey, let's just pump the brakes. Why are we doing this? There's got to be a better solution, which is always a good idea. Versus, oh, I want to be a hero and I'm going to sacrifice my own people. He did that in here. He's his team. He sacrificed Multiplex Man. Technically, that would have been more than one person, but whatever. And just a whole nature. So think of Black Adam and the Frost King as really the same type of character in here. What ultimately makes one bad is the means in which they do it and the demand that they have for an outcome. And that's why Black Adam was a great villain in here. All right, moving on. Oh, that got deep quick. We'll try to keep that a little bit more shallow. I'm just kidding. We're really not, because we're going to jump right into Secret Origins. Love the old Secret Origins issue. It was a great way to get an origin. when you couldn't afford like the origin story, right? They always had the little secret origin things. Well, we get one about Superboy Prime in here, and how much of a douchebag he turned into. He comes from a comic book loving type character who actions in a comic book because the way his universe is set up are really just stories outside of his universe that are actually happening. And eventually, during Crisis Earth, the first one, he gets dragged into it because he's technically one of the Superman of the multiverse, right? He gets dragged into it, gets the powers, gets to be a superhero, jacks it all up, horrible human being, and can be portrayed as a villain. But he's not. Remember, villainous intent, right? You can be a villain, but you don't have to be a bad guy. Right? Like, if Lex Luthor recycled, right? Think of it that way, right? In this one, he's not a bad guy. He's just didn't do it right, or maybe rushed into it, or whatever the case may be. We get that story, and we get a complete reboot or reset of his life in here where he can kind of go back and redo it all. And I would imagine that everybody has that one moment in their life. They're like, man, if I could just go back and would have said this one thing or did this one thing, this horrible thing wouldn't have happened. He actually got that in here on a much larger scale. And Krypto's hanging out with him. Anytime you add Krypto, that's pretty cool. Man, my beard is weird. What is going on? There's some randomness for you. I should have really combed that before I got started. All right, moving on. Batman Annual number 5. We get the origin story of the Clown Hunter in here. And what a great example of... I don't even know how to put it. Okay, trauma. We'll call it. Okay, especially trauma. What we get in here is we get Clown Hunter, who's had something very dramatic happen to him. The loss of his parents. The Joker killed his parents. Gave him the laughing gas, right? And his utter faith that Batman at some point would revenge his family's death or get the Joker in some way. And it just never happened. And to a young person, this can be devastating when their heroes get reduced to regular human beings that can't complete. So he feels he needs to take that mantle. He even says in here, while he's talking to Dr. Thompson, a friend of Batman's, of course, I just want, the wrong to be punished and the good to survive. And this is very immature thinking. Good doesn't always happen, and even the lines of good can be skewed and vague at best. So in this, I really liked it because it really brought out that we are dealing with a child here. And children, ultimately, he's 17. I know you can't really call a 17-year-old a child, but a young adult that obviously has a very closed-minded view of the world in its most simplistic form. With that said, his expectations are crumbled as they're not being met, so he feels he needs to go in there and force it true. Who else does this? I'll give you a hint. It's right there on the cover. Right there on the cover. It was the same thing. But, Batman doesn't want him to make the wrong decisions or the same decisions he did. And that's what I would imagine we would want as adults. We would want that for all children. You don't have to make all the decisions I did. There are easier paths. And then we ridicule them for always looking for the easier path, which is kind of unfair for us adults. And that kind of happens in here, too. So I hope that gets sorted out. I do agree with the guys over at Blaster Stash It, however. This kid, he's not going to heal from this, right? He's probably going to be a Robin, or like I thought, a possible sidekick for even that Ghostmaker character later on that we have to get in March because Future State's coming. I've made up my mind on it. I'm hesitant. All right. We're going to roll into... Marvel. But I want to start this issue of U.S. Agent with a disclaimer. I collect comic books. I love Silver Age and older... I love older Silver Age and Golden Age comic books. I love to collect them. I love to have them. There is there's no intrinsic value to it. It's all instrumental, and I know this. I know that it is just something that I can have that has an exorbitant amount of cash associated with it that's not true to the actual value. A little bit of economics. In here, we kind of go over what is known as the greater fool theory. So I'm going to break this down for you. Break out your pens and papers. We're going to talk economics real quick. I know a lot of comic book collectors and things out there think they understand economics. They don't, and most of them are about 90% wrong. So I'm going to break this down for you. All the people that sell mystery boxes, auctions, all this stuff with comic books, even eBay and all this is all based on the greater fool theory, meaning that they bought something that they can raise a price in and sell to somebody else. In other words, I'm a fool for buying it. I'm going to sell it to the greater fool. Now, don't get upset that, you're calling us a fool. It's just the name of the theory because it originally came out of con artistry, right? Of selling land, like swamp, like literally trying to sell swampland to it. This guy would buy it and then, of course, try to sell it to a developer who didn't know the lay of the land or anything. So it's just a title. I'm not calling anybody a fool, please, because I would be subject under that as well. Where this comes a problem is this is where you always hear people talking about bubbles. When's the real estate bubble going to pop, or the comic, right? The greater fool theory is what creates these bubbles, right? We think that there's some sort of non-intrinsic but value to something that we're buying. Therefore, prices get exorbitant, and they get to a point where they can't sustain, and meaning that they become so expensive, and the person on the tail end can't sell it for a higher amount. So then the bubble pops and everything starts flooding the market super cheap, super fast. That's the greater fool theory. All right, so where does this come into a problem? It's all based off of it. I've sold comic books. I've bought comic books. I understand it's called the greater. So I do not mean this in an insulting way. But it is important to know. Because also 90% of your real estate's done this way. Like invest in real estate. Okay, somebody bought something and they want me to give them money at a higher rate for a possible return. If we sell it higher, that's how you know that you're falling into a greater fool theory fallacy in some degree. So be on the lookout. That gets mentioned in here. A bunch of stockholders are literally doing that for a company, and then Shield comes in, buys the company, and makes a front out of it. I'm not particularly interested in this book. I was super excited to see the mentioning of the greater fool theory in here and how they were just openly admitting it, that this was what they're going to do. It is an economic strategy. It does work. Again, I didn't mean that to insult anybody. It's just a title. It's like Motley Fool, the investment firm. They're not all a bunch of fools or people invest with them, right? Think of it in those terms. All right, moving on. I spent more time on fool theory or greater fool theory than I did that actual comic book. That's because nothing really happened. It's very confusing. It's all over the place. We meet U.S. Agent Sister. I can't follow this. It keeps jumping around so often that there's not really much story to talk about. There was some childhood trauma, a fire. Brother probably killed himself, maybe. Didn't really explain it. And for some reason, the siblings don't get along. Most of us can relate to that around the holiday. All right, moving into Maestro. So, Hulk in the last issue kills Hercules. So we thought. Well, Hercules goes, and they don't show. I wish they would have shown this. They didn't do the artwork in it, but basically he worked to deal with Hades and came back to life while he's burning at the stake, because that's how Hulk feels he needs to get rid of the body. And they fight, and it was awesome. Apparently, one of the servants, the little disgruntled servant, ended up killing Hercules the second time. So Hulk now wants to be called the new Maestro. So that's pretty much what happened here. Great artwork, simplistic story, fast read, great pacing. I have no complaints with this book whatsoever. It's fun, and that's the point of it. All right, let's get deep again. Let's talk about literature. So, in the early 1800s, a particular book came out, and it was actually kind of chastised. But over the years, it has been changed and morphed into several different genres, if you will. Always kind of on the creepy horror side. And that's the story of The Picture of Dorian Gray. If you don't know, if you remember the movie League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all right, the guy that had the painting of himself, and as long as nothing happens to the painting, right, then he gets to live forever, like all the age. Okay, this was all based off The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is the precursor to, boom, The Picture of Everything Else. At least I think it's the precursor. They set it up like it should be the precursor. It could have been shortly afterwards. Regardless, we have the same characters that are in Dorian, the picture of Dorian Gray. Still have the same characters in it. It's witty. It's fun. It takes place in that time in France, right around the late 1800s, like 1890s, where the big debate was: is a picture considered art? Like that's the time frame we're talking about, where somebody actually framed a picture, and everybody's like, "Is this really considered art, or is there any passion to this?" Like that was a question, a legitimate question back in the day in the realms of art. So that happens in here. Of course, we have our Basel, who originally painted the painting of the picture of Dorian Gray, and we find out that he's the Ripper of France, and a young artist catches him. And now he has to be his assistant because he gets blackmailed into it. And his lover / artist assistant friend, well, he's kind of hoping that his friend will come back to him at some point. It's been 3 years later. Looks like his friend's coming back. I'm actually enjoying this. I'm going to pick up issue 2 of this as long as my comic book store has it. I'll be reading this, but it's not really a comic book per se. Moving on to Department of Truth. So, like, this takes 60 years of conspiracy and throws it in here. Like, our whole political system and all the great conspiracies, everything from the murder of JFK all the way up to, like, Pizzagate. Right? That was a thing, right? And Trump, right? Even throws Trump in there as an oddball. Takes all this stuff and tries to make a linear story out of it, and how the Department of Truth's job isn't so much there to reveal the truth, but to keep the conspiracies at a guessing point. Meaning, if you can come up with different solutions for it, it's probably the best story to put out there. And sometimes they got to do some dirty wet work in here, and then they have to do it. A reporter gets all this information from this organization, the Black Hat. We don't have much information on it. Hopefully we get some more in the next few issues, because I'm starting to get a little bit more curious about that. And he's going through it with his editor, and his editor's like, "Geez, Jim, this all sounds like conspiracy theories." And he goes, "Yeah, but my question is why are we getting all this information? Why is it coming directly to me? Why is it making sense? And this room is being bugged," and it is, by the Department of Truth. And old Lee Harvey Oswald is next door there looking at his young protege like, "Yeah, you got to kill him. Like, you got to kill them, because if they make sense of the conspiracy and put it out there, then in this particular world, the conspiracy actually becomes true and wreaks havoc." So that's where they left us off at. Will the new young former FBI agent Papa Cap and the nosy reporters? I like this. As crazy as this storyline is, I shouldn't like it. I like conspiracy theories, but I don't like it when they try to make the conspiracy, the thought of conspiracy itself, the main story. I just like conspiracy theories. I think they're funny because they're never ending, right? The explanation is never ending. And this, apparently it is. If you just keep it from happening and pop a cap in somebody. Problem solved. Problem stay installed. All right, moving on. Dark Interlude. I don't know if I like this. This is issue number 2. I don't know. It's weird. And even when you take notes on this kind of thing and you read it, like, where's my notes after this thing? It's so weird. Here's what I wrote down. Man, I'm not really sure what's going on in this book. We have a Don Quixote style story here. We got the narrator who's talking directly to you, and in this particular issue, even wants you to interact and write in the comic book like a dialogue box. He wants you to do that. And then there's like this fantasy realm too, where they're trying to squash an issue there. We still don't know what the issue is. And then we have this other partial fantasy world where a bard just got killed. Bard isn't playing a musical instrument. He gets capped. And this is all around a writer who stole, plagiarized somebody else's work and is making his own in a volume 2, and the contract needs to get signed over. So old lady contract needs him to sign it. She has him killed. Come to find out, it's all being left, even the rights are being left to the granddaughter. Make sure I get this right. The granddaughter of the person he plagiarized from. I don't know. And also the use of over theatrical grammar throughout this entire narration is ridiculous. Thus, these, that's are all thrown in here. It's like reading a cooler version of Shakespeare through a narcissist. I wish, yes, I know what narcissist is, but that's what it's like. Best I can give you. If the number 3 comes in, I'm picking it up because I need to figure out what's going on in this story before I make any accurate judgments to it. Right now, it's interesting. So, other than that, guys, from the Clan Pocan to all of yours, happy holidays. Happy holidays to all of you. I hope you get everything you want, wherever that may be. Also, keep your eyes open. It's the 23rd today. I have very little time to finish this Keyblade, so we're going to be putting in some late nights. Christmas shopping and family, everything gets in the way. So I got nothing else, guys. I got to get out to the evil lair and finish this thing up. Good seeing you. Hope to see you again.